Which in-house players do the Texans need to prioritize to return their own free agents? And DraftKings has set Houston's over-under at 9.5 wins for 2026. Disrespectful or just realistic?
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, from H-Town to your town. Today's episode and every episode of the Locked On Texans podcast is for Texan fans all around. What are we talking about today, guys? Is DeMeco's way a problem? What am I talking about? Can it always have to be the defense to win the day? I think there may needs to be a change. And obviously, I think there was trending the other way until things. We'll talk about those things, right? Over under 9.5 wins in 2026, according to DraftKings. Fair or foul for the Houston Texans. But it's important to look at who needs to come back. Texans' own in-house pending free agents, priority to sign list. So we're going to dive into that. Shout out to my everydayers from the Himalayas for making the Locked On Texans podcast your first listen of the day, and for being a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports network in the country. Shout out to my boy Stressins, right? Houston Stressins, my guy Garrett. He put together a list of Houston Texans 2025 free agents, priorities to sign. And he did it from high, mid to low priority free agents for Houston. Christian Kirk, medium. Jimmy Ward, low. Denico Autry, medium. Sheldon Rankins, high. Derek Barnett, medium. EJ Speed, high. Tommy Townsend, high. Tim Settle, high. Foley Fatukasi, low. MJ Stewart, medium. Nick Chubb, low. Naquan Jones, medium. Can't wait to talk about that. Dare Ogunbowale, medium. Braxton Berrios, low. Ed Ingram, medium. Trent Brown, medium. Christian Harris, low. Miles Bryant, medium. Harrison Bryant and Damone Clark, low and low. Let me tell you something. And again, shout out to my guy Stressins. Make sure you check him out on social media. My top targets to bring back, in my opinion, EJ Speed is #1. Speed is up there for me, simply because this is a good linebacker class, and I think for Houston, they go between 3rd, 4th, and 5th round, unless they, if they can get an additional 2nd-round pick if they look to trade back. Houston already has 2 2nd-round picks with their own, and also owning the Commanders. Shout out to Larry Tunsil. They got that 2nd-round pick. So if they look to trade back out of their 1st round, maybe they can get a 3rd, 2nd-round pick in that bunch, and maybe they look to go get a linebacker. But this is some good linebackers coming out this year. Obviously, you trust DeMeco Ryans and his coaching staff to coach up linebackers. But one thing about it is EJ Speed knows how to play linebacker at a high level. He did it for a number of years with the Indianapolis Colts. He came over here to Houston and filled his role perfectly. And if you're looking at a championship defense who's anchoring the championship window, it's important to get championship-style players back in here. No, I'm not saying EJ Speed has won a championship. That is not what I'm saying. But EJ Speed, IQ-wise, play-wise, downhill ability-wise, right? Dropping back in coverage-wise, all the things that you want for your quote-unquote, sub linebacker, and the things that you want them to do when they can relieve a Azeez Al-Shaair or relieve Iwi Toa. EJ Speed fits the mold. So I think he is a high priority. Another top target, Tim Settle and Sheldon Rankins, in my opinion, share the same, importance in my opinion. Sheldon Rankins last year coming back to Houston after a year in Cincinnati, which I think he hated completely. We had an opportunity to talk with him in the offseason at training camp, and it felt like hearing him talk about his time in Cincinnati, it felt like in his mind, he just couldn't wait to get back to Houston. So I'm not sure if them boys had a group chat going. It was like, hey, man, I miss y'all. I see what y'all boys doing, man. Hey, don't forget about me. I'm free this offseason. It felt like he wanted to get back to Houston. But the fact of the matter is, both Tim Settle and Sheldon Rankins are extremely valuable vets for this team. Rankins ended the year, I think, with 5 sacks. Tim Settle didn't finish the year due to an injury. But when you look at their ability to stop the run game, Tim Settle shines. When you look at the ability to get after the quarterback, Sheldon Rankins shine. And they are both good at what I didn't mention. Like what Tim Settle does very well, he also gets after the quarterback at a high level for what he does against the run. What Sheldon Rankins does in terms of getting after the quarterback, he also plays the run pretty well compared to what he does to get after the quarterback. So I like both of them, but I would only sign one. Whichever Houston decides to roll with, I'd like for them to bring back Naquan Jones, who they brought over from the Chargers. Obviously, you look at Jones, he'd be on one of those cheaper deals, cheaper 1-year deals where you extend it out and you keep that rotational piece going, similar to what our guy Khalil Davis was for Houston a couple of seasons ago. I thought Naquan Jones came in and filled that role perfectly. Each game he played, it seemed like his snaps went up. He gained the trust of Coach Rod Wright, and he played some good football for the Houston Texans. I personally think, as I see my man has Tommy Townsend as a high priority to re-sign, I personally think Houston can improve at punter and move on from Tommy Townsend. Listen, I like a Brady man. He's going to be available. He's a free agent. Don't know what's going to go on with that situation with where he is now in Philly. But he had a higher yards per punt average, and I look to upgrade with a proven, consistent talent, which was Townsend's issue in 2025. Just too inconsistent. Now, the medium that, in my opinion, should be a low. Christian Kirk is a no-go for me. Honestly, he's a no-go. 8.5 yards per game, yards per catch per game last year when he did play, missed 4 games. Injuries kept being an issue. Only started 3 games. And in many ways for Houston, why did you draft Jalen Noel? He eventually needs to get on some type of trajectory of being next up. And he can't do that with Christian Kirk in his way. And that's just in my opinion. Keeping Kirk is delaying the inevitable. Christian Kirk has been on the decline for the past 2.5 seasons. 2023 in Jacksonville, played and started in 12 games, but the injuries started to pile up on him. 2024, 8 games, started 7, and the injuries kept being an issue, kept popping up. And then for Houston, they traded for him last offseason, I think for a 7th-round pick. 13 games played, only started 3, 239 yards, under 10 yards per catch, only 1 TD, and an area of his game where I thought Christian Kirk would be the most valuable for Houston, first downs, only 12 first downs on the year. Obviously, injuries kept him off the field, so the first down numbers couldn't be higher. But there were just too many times when he did play where he was just a complete non-factor for the Houston Texans. And so I think they got to look at that. And they got to look at that and say, hey, we just have to move on from a veteran that, maybe we look for him to replace what we lost from Stephon Diggs. Maybe that was the case. Maybe that was the thinking. But it just didn't happen. It did not happen. And you know what? It's time to cut ties. There's a couple of other names on this list that I love to talk about for the Houston Texans, and I'm going to do that when we return before diving into the over-under talk. 9.5. 9.5 for the Houston Texans, according to DraftKings in 2026. Is that disrespect? Is it fair? Is it foul? More Locked On Texans talk on the way. Don't go nowhere. And before I dive into that conversation, Locked On Texan fans, listeners, and viewers, welcome to the 5-Hour Energy Flavor Draft. We're looking at every aspect of the draft to let you know which tasty flavors are the best and which just might be sleepers. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and only one is going to take that top spot. Who's going to be this year? Fernando Mendoza. Which 5-Hour Energy flavor is going to be the number one guy? 5-Hour Energy has a wide variety of flavors, something for everyone. 5-Hour Energy shots give you a boost with 0 sugar. Also, 5-Hour Energy has a lot of upcoming flavor innovations planned. I want to mention some of the flavors that I like to see get made. I like to see a lemonade flavor, right? That's just me. Maybe they can get creative and do a Arnold Palmer flavor. How about that? 0 sugar. That'll get me going. And so this is what I like, man. I like for the innovation. How can things become tastier and still provide that 5-hour quality? So find your new flavor, your favorite flavor at 5-Hour Energy Shots, available at 5hourenergy.com or available at Amazon. And also, Texan fans, if you got a business out there, you need help running that business, a lot of times, what's the worst thing that you have to deal with? Bringing in somebody that you can trust to get the job done. You also have to deal with workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to feel still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for: skills, experience, location. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all the boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check the boxes with less stress, less time, and more results. When you need that right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of the show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about it on Indeed. You heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Welcome back, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers, as we continue looking at some of the 2025 free agents priority list. We talked about Christian Kirk, talked about Sheldon Rankins, EJ Speed. I'll move on from Tommy Townsend. I think for the most part, this list is pretty fair. I look at Dare Ogunbowale. He has him as a medium. I think Houston can move on. They can afford to move on from Dare Ogunbowale. Do we believe that the Houston Texans will, A, not address running back this offseason in some way, shape, or form, whether it be free agency or draft? The Houston Texans will address the running back position. B, do we think Jawad Jordan can't fill in and do the same thing that Dare Ogunbowale can as a running back? Special teams aside, I think you can trust Jawad Jordan. I really do. I think you can trust Jawad Jordan as a third down back. I also think you have Woody Marks to do some of the things that catapulted Dare Ogunbowale. You want him to pick up blitzes. You want him to be trustworthy on third downs and the communication. All of those nuances of what you look for in a third down back, quote unquote. Woody Marks has shown his ability to do that and excel when he's in those positions. So I like Marks in that role. I do. I like Jawad Jordan's ability to just be a better running back, and I also think, again, the Houston Texans will address running back this offseason. Miles Bryant is a medium right now. I think that's fair. I think Miles Bryant, he does some things that this is why I think bringing back Miles Bryant is fair. You can absolutely cut him after training camp. And I think for Houston, it is important for the Houston Texans to look at getting a third cornerback in this year's draft, or maybe by free agency. Now, this is why I say the draft. Free agency, a player that you're going to want to come in and fill the role for that third cornerback, it could be Miles Bryant. The draft, you'll get that young cornerback in this building with Dino Vasso and their defensive coaching staff, and you can get them coached up. Similar to what the Houston Texans did last year with Jalen Reed out of USC, battled injuries, but he's going to come back. He's going to be competing for that third cornerback this year, and Houston can also boost what they need from an additional cornerback in the draft. And so Miles Bryant at a medium, I think, is fair to be signed during the initial free agent period, but I can also see him being moved on from once Houston has to cut down to a 53-man roster. The same way I feel about Miles Bryant, I feel similar about MJ Stewart, a player who, when he's on the field, he plays some good football for Houston. Obviously not excellent. You can improve, but I think he's trustworthy. And on the back end of that defense, that's what the Houston Texans love. They love trustworthy guys. If you're not doing your job, And if you're trying to, if the communication is right on that back end of the defense, Houston's gonna move on from it. They did it with your boy C.J. Gardner-Johnson, and then when I look at but when I look at MJ Stewart, I think he does have a good connection with Kalen Bullock. So that's important to keep in mind. Now, the over-under 9.5 for 26, according to DraftKings, is that fair foul for the Houston Texans? I think it's fair. In some ways, I think it's fair. Everybody else around the Houston Texans will get better. And I think why that's fair, can this offense be in some ways overhauled in one offseason? I believe it can. I believe the Houston Texans can make the room by restructuring contracts to put valuable pieces around C.J. Stroud. However, at one point last year, if it felt like the Houston Texans weren't going to win that many games, and they went on in historic for the Houston Texans case 2-month win run where they didn't lose in 2 months. So we have to keep that in mind. I think league-wide, people are down on quarterback C.J. Stroud compared to last offseason. People may have been a little bit higher on quarterback C.J. Stroud. And I still think there's question marks surrounding the offense. 9.5, I think, is where it is because the respect level is there for DeMeco's defense. What's happening here in Houston on the defensive side of the ball. Why it's not 10.5, and we know the Houston Texans, the first 3 years under DeMeco Ryans, he's won 10 games in a row. I think the view is, what the offense is going to give Houston next year. And I think that's completely fair. Offensively, they're going to have Jaden Higgins, who's been putting in some work. Shout out to Hig. He's going to be better. Nico Collins is going to come back healthier. And I think for Houston, I would really monitor Nico Collins' health moving forward. That concussion on the front end of his head, it was kind of scary. It wasn't a violent tackle, so I think it may have taken away from the perception of how scary it was. But that was a scary concussion, in my opinion, because where it took place, right in the middle. But they got some young pieces and vets that they trust, right? But like I talked about, if you're moving on from Christian Kirk, the thought process should be Jalen Noel needs to step up, and we also have Tank Dell coming back. But those are still 2 question marks for 2026. Jalen Noel gave Houston a very small sample size of what he can do. Tank Dell missed an entire year of football. Those are real question marks that you have to worry about. Outside of Dalton Schultz, there was not another tight end offensive weapon. So offensively, even when we look at running back, because on this list from Stretching, he has Nick Chubb, who I think finished the year with 4.1 yards per carry, still respectable, as a low priority to sign. I agree with that, right? Both Nick Chubb is a low, Darrell Ngubwale is a medium for the Houston Texans. But when you look at the run game, that was a problem for Houston because of the offensive line. Like, are they going to be able to get the pieces in the building to revamp that offensive line to get the offense where it needs to be from a schematic standpoint? That is why I think it's at a 9.5. It could be looked at as disrespectful because, I mean, the year prior, some of those same issues were, concerns, but you had Joe Mixon, who can eliminate problems. But that's the question mark in itself, whether or not Houston brings back Joe Mixon or look to go out in free agency and bring in a Breece Hall or bring in some of these other Kenneth Walker, who the Seattle Seahawks will not retain, or draft a running back. Your running back 1 or running back 1A, 1B is still a question mark. So offensively, right guard is a question mark with Ed Ingram being a free agent, who is high on this list, rightfully so. I think he's actually a medium on this list, with Trent Brown also being a medium. One of those guys, I think, for the Houston Texans need to come back. But Ed Ingram is a free agent. Trent Brown is a free agent. Question marks surrounding Joe Mixon. Question marks surrounding, what Tank Dell can do coming back. Question marks surrounding the left guard position. And for those of us here in Houston, question marks surrounding center. Offensively, there's just too many question marks. And the biggest one is, where does CJ fit in all of this? I think 9.5 is based on purely the defense being strong enough to will them to 7 games and the offense doing just enough as of right now to win an additional 3 games. I mean, right now for people who may be on the gambling side, I think for Houston it is smart to look at, hey, let's take the under until maybe you get through free agency, you get through the draft, and maybe your positions on that may change. Now, is DeMeco way a problem? What do I mean by that? Stick around for more Locked On Texans talk on the opposite side.
Hey, it's Matt Derry from the Locked On Lions podcast. The people I love depend on me. If I'm gone, the financial responsibilities don't disappear. I didn't want my family figuring things out during the hardest moment of their lives. That's why I knew only one place to go. I chose life insurance through my friends at Ethos. Ethos makes getting life insurance fast and easy, 100% online. You can get a quote in seconds, apply in minutes, and get same-day coverage. There's no medical exam. You just answer a few simple health questions. You can get up to $3 million in coverage. Some policies are as low as $30 a month. I love the folks at Ethos. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos now by going to ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. In as little as 10 minutes, you can get the free quote and up to $3 million in coverage at ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. That is ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Ethos.com/LockedOnNFL. Application times and rates may vary.
Welcome back, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Closing out today's show, here's an interesting tidbit for you guys. The entire Browns starting offensive line is set to be free agents next month. That's Cam Robinson, Joel Bettino, Ethan Pachick, Wyatt Teller, Jack Conklin, their right tackle. Feels like, maybe Houston can land one of those guys to bring here and help this offensive line get to the next level. Again, I'm very curious to see how Houston goes about offensive line this year. Like, you can lose out on Trent Brown, you can lose out on Ed Ingram. Your left guard position is already in disarray. Now, losing out on Trent Brown, you can slide in Titus Howard. But Ed Ingram, that's 2 guard positions, with the inside being extremely questionable at center. What you're going to get out of your guard center guard combo. They got to improve, right? And I look at Bettino, and I look at Pachick, and I look at Wyatt Teller. Houston can definitely benefit from adding one of those guys if they elect to not re-sign Ed Ingram because the price is too high, or Trent Brown because of age and injury concerns. But that kind of brings me to, is DeMeco way a problem? For a lot of people, view DeMeco's way as, my defense will win us the game, don't worry about it. To a point where in the playoff game, punting down, trusting the defense to go out there and maybe get a pick six or a fumble turnover, TD or something like that. Like, for a lot of people, that was a problem. He was called out on it from a lot of people, whether it was in the media space or just talking with friends throughout the city of Houston that love football. And it's just like, at some point, DeMeco, your defense can't do it all. It's unfair to think that the defense can do it all, even though historically, since DeMeco has arrived, the defense has scored more TDs than the offense. So it's kind of like, in his mind, my defense has done it before. We can do it again. And that was something that was brought up during the season at a point before the win streak started and during the win streak. How much of the blame should DeMeco take for the offensive performance, and how much of the glory should the defense get for winning those games? And I think that's a fair question. Looking at the games that they won, all 10 of them, the defense gets all the glory because they went up against some high-powered offenses. In one of those games without C.J. Stroud, two without C.J. Stroud, looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Buffalo Bills, and the defense in the fourth quarter against the Jacksonville Jaguars absolutely stole the show. An interception, a return TD fumble, right? Crucial sacks to help wheel that team to a comeback against Buffalo. 8 sacks. So I think when we look at DeMeco's way being a problem, It is to an extent. Well, I'm sorry, it is not to an extent, because without that defense, they are not in those games. Even in the playoffs against the Patriots, I mean, Drake made 3 interceptions, 3 turnovers, right? It was a 5-point game going into the fourth quarter because of the defense, making plays, getting sacks, getting turnovers, stopping the run game. So this is a very interesting conversation to me, and I think people can view it as a problem. Here's where the problem lies. Is he right in his thinking that it's my way and not the highway, but it's my way is the best way? Because on the opposite side, for 2 seasons now, the pieces are not put together well enough, right? And I think that is where it's a different conversation. And what are the pieces? Shuffling left guard spot, shuffling right tackle spot, Nico Collins, Dalton Schultz, and nobody else. In many ways, when everything breaks down towards the end of the year, it's just those two. An offensive line that isn't the best, can't protect from a pass game perspective. A year later, they get better with pass protection, but the run game ain't where it needs to be. I don't have a running back that I can trust to lean on. I'm out there with a rookie running back. I'm out there with a rookie receiver, and my quarterback is not playing at a higher level. He's not rising to a higher level like my defense is. But when you look on the defensive side of the ball, Will Anderson is rising to a higher level. Kamar Lassiter is ascending. Derek Stingley is playing at a high level. Danielle Hunter, all of those stars on the defensive side of the ball, they either played at a consistent high level or played past that high level at some point during this year. Not too many games during the regular season where you can sit back and say this player offensively, aside from Nico Collins and Dalton Schultz, played at a very high level for 4 quarters. So I can't say his way is a problem. I can say that his way is the reason why Houston has won these games. It's the reason why I think Houston is sitting at 9.5 in 2026. It's the reason why throughout the league, many people feel an easy fix could, at the quarterback or offensive altogether could get this team to the Super Bowl. It's the reason why Kyle Shanahan viewed this team as a Super Bowl team during at one point an interview in the playoffs. It's because of DeMeco's way. Now, here's my challenge to DeMeco. The numbers came out. The Texans defense was 7th in the NFL in defensive team spending on the defensive side of the ball. The offense, I think, was 30th or 29th. Can't bargain no more. You tried bargaining in 2025, didn't work. And when it all broke down, the places that you did not bargain, they all shined. The areas that you did bargain, it all broke down. Center and left guard was just god awful. The center position was bad. Running back couldn't get none going. I don't think Joe Mixon, as good as he is, would have made that much of a difference. It was if he was on the field. You're bargaining at running back, bringing in Nick Chubb. In many ways, you banked on, which I consider bargaining, but you banked on a Christian Kirk who, coming into last season, already had those injury concerns for 2 seasons in a row. Hadn't played in December in 2 seasons in a row. And it can't always be if we execute better. I'm big on sometimes you can execute to perfection. If the player is not one of those guys, then it's not going to get you to the next level. There's going to be a ceiling that you can't get past. And that was Houston this year. And they did a lot of bargaining. They bargained with Laken Tomlinson. They bargained with Ed Ingram, but it worked out for them. They bargained with Andrews. There's too much bargaining going on the offensive side of the ball. And as a head coach, I will give DeMeco a lot of credit for spending a lot more time on the offensive side of the ball during training camp practice. But as a head coach, each and every offseason or each and every quarter of the season, you got to assess these issues. I don't think Houston could have made a difference throughout the season. The one thing that we look towards is maybe Houston trading for Breece Hall, giving up a third rounder, getting him here. He would have made a hell of a lot of difference, right? And then maybe you sign him in season so you don't have to worry about a free agent period. Maybe that's it. But now, season to season, reflecting on last year and what held him back, can't bargain no more on the offensive side of the ball, because the fact is, you didn't bargain on defense, number 2 defense, number 1 defense in some categories, defensive TD, 2 defensive TDs against the Steelers, and you were 1 score away from taking the lead against the Patriots in the fourth quarter. They kept you in every game this year, won you every game you won. Offensively, you bargained, and it didn't happen. Didn't work out. Thank you for watching today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. Please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast, or follow me on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Until next time, ladies and gents, and Texas fans across the nation, peace.